Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Shrimp City Report. My name's Devin. I am joined by our other two hosts, and you want to introduce yourself?
My name's DJ.
I'm Jonathan Ford, and I'm just doing my best.
And today we have Mike from Captain's Comics. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Mike. What's going on?
Sure. So I am born and raised in Charleston. Grew up loving comic books and comic book culture. 17 years ago now, I took over Captain Lou's Comics, the long-running comic store in town, rebranded to Captain's Comics and Toys. And then 16 years ago, we started hosting a comic book convention every year. So we are coming up on the 16th annual Captain's Comic Expo, and happy to share a little bit about that with you guys today.
I feel old now, just thinking about those years.
16 years, yeah. When we moved back into West Ashley, that was it was pretty cool to see Captain's rebranded. I know, Jonathan, you've gone there quite a bit.
Like our family get-togethers every time. You and Aunt Madeline would babysit me pretty much. Like every now and then we'd go to Captain Lou's, and
it was always like a bike ride away too, which was nice.
Yeah,
dangerous, but hadn't that close,
Yeah, we'll talk about Captain's a little bit, especially, frankly, what it means to Charleston and fandom. Period. So, Mike, you're from Charleston. Where did you go to high school?
I went to First Baptist downtown.
Where did you get your comics when you were coming up?
So when I was a kid, my grandpa would come and visit every, once or twice a month. And whenever he would come, he would bring me either a comic book or a toy. And so a lot of times it'd be fun because, mom and dad weren't always buying you toys and stuff. So grandpa would come around and he would buy you comics or toys or things like that. I would get stuff from read them at the grocery store. When you go shopping with mom, there was a book bag around the corner that I could walk to as I got a little older. They had a spinner rack of comics. And then, like I said, Captain Lou's wasn't too far from the house, so every once in a while you'd get to go up there. Once I got a car and a part-time job, I had enough money and I could start buying stuff on my own, and that's probably when I got into them a little more dedicated, because you have the budget and the ability to get them on a more consistent basis and get into things a little more detailed and in-depth.
DJ, Jonathan, question for you. Do you remember what spinner racks are for comics?
Yes, they still exist, but they're just for sunglasses now.
Yeah, pretty much.
They used to be, every 7-Eleven, every convenience store. And, me, I got tons and tons of my comics just off of those.
Yeah.
So, where'd you go to college?
I went to Clemson.
Go Tigers.
4 years there, marketing and advertising.
You came out, were you using the degree?
I did a year of corporate stuff and was just not all that engaged. It wasn't for me. Wasn't particularly thrilled with it. And for years, people would say, "Oh, what do you want to do when you grow up?" And I'd say, "Look, I want to have a wife and kids, and I want to take care of my family and enjoy how I spend my days. I'm probably going to go into sales or something in that ballpark because it's probably what I'm, good at. But if money didn't matter and I could do whatever I wanted, I'd just run a comic book store." And I remember saying that from probably teenage years on up. And then, about a year into being out of school and doing the corporate thing, Lou was ready to retire and was just bored with running a store. He had retired from his career job. This was the only thing holding him back, and he was ready to move on. And I said, I got to look at this. I got to do the business plan. I got to write this up. I got to at least see how this is, because if I don't, I'm going to regret it. And looked at it, and it made sense, and talked to a lone person, and it made sense, and, talked to my wife, and I think she wisely wasn't going to tell me no to this, and borrowed a stupid amount of money and dove into a comic book store. Mm-hmm. One of those things that people, especially family, was politely supportive of, even though I don't know that many of them understood it was a business. I wasn't just going to sit around and read comics all day. But took that over in 2007. Was often asked, "Are you really old enough to own a store?" I don't get that anymore. But we went in there and we had fun with people. The idea was not to reinvent the wheel, especially the first 6 months or so, but just to go in there and be friendly and read the stuff and talk to people, make it a good experience, make it somewhere that was pleasant and welcoming and well lit and well staffed, to where people would want to come more often, they would get more out of the experience, and the more they got out of the experience, the more they're going to buy, and they don't mind spending more money because they're getting more out of it. And as a result, I mean, we blew all of his sales records out of the water right away just by trying to treat people good and have a good time with it.
Yeah, yeah.
So I got two questions for you. The first is, because you obviously do have a passion for comics, was it at all like a weird transition to be like, this is my passion, my hobby, into suddenly like, this is my day job and bread and butter? Was that rough at all, or?
So I had done retail as part-time jobs in school. So I understood retail pretty well and had a background in that. Never thought I'd use it, but I had it. And then in school, you learned how to read a profit and loss statement. You learned how to do, those fundamentals of business that every business is going to do. So experience-wise, I was oddly perfect for it. And interest-wise, it was something I knew a lot about, because when I was bored at work, I was reading about comic books, because I'd rather be doing that instead. And then, one of the things that not a lot of people have to worry about as a fan versus as an owner is, how much am I going to keep for myself versus how much am I going to sell for the store? So if the first issue of Spider-Man comes in and I buy it, at a wholesale price, do I keep that book or do I sell that book? And where's the line of like, how much is too much to keep, or do I keep everything I like? Do I keep only certain things that I like? And for me, I had to decide very early on that getting to be part of the story for a little while was going to be a good approach. I buy a high dollar first copy of the first Wolverine. I get to own it for 6 months. I get to talk about it a bunch of times. I get to show it to a bunch of people, and then I sell it to someone and they get to enjoy it. And then I get to take that money and turn it around and buy a first Fantastic Four or, some other cool book. And so I don't necessarily have all of those books still in my possession, but I've got to be a part of a lot of stories. And at the end of the day, getting to be a part of the stories was the part that I found fulfilling, and that became my avenue for compromise as far as that went.
Okay, yeah.
That's awesome. Sorry, my second question, like, obviously you emphasize interpersonal contact with your customers and employees, and it's all about that experience. And I know this is a little bit of a hacky question, but a lot of comic stores, like during the pandemic, they didn't quite fare as well as you. And as someone who does like more of the interpersonal relationships and really try to make it a place where people want to hang out and spend time and create relationship with your employees, like how did you navigate that?
So, I mean, in general, you have to have an approach of saying, okay, we've got to make money, while at the same time, part of it is the experience. So I don't want people to just move in there and camp around on the floors and read like it's the school book club. But at the same time, like, you want it to be a place where people go, oh yeah, I like going there. I like the staff. I like the attitude. I like that it's organized. I like that they stock things. Like, it is that it's a whole approach to it. And I think when you invest in people, then when it comes time to buy something and you're one of the people they can buy it from, they go, yeah, I want to be a part of that. I want to reciprocate. I want to be part of that relationship, because it's not just Walmart or Target.
It's a community.
Where you go in and you buy your crap and you leave, and you're just looking for convenience or a not horrible experience and just to call it a day. You're part of something bigger. So, when COVID made life a lot more challenging and a lot more complicated, we just kind of said, all right, like, how do we still do community in that world? I know for the month or so we were closed, like, I would hop on Facebook or Instagram Live. I'd have two phones set up at the same time pointed at us, and we'd just talk about stuff we had. And I mean, some of it was selling, and some of it was just chatting with people, and some of it was just swapping stories. And, it wasn't something that was ever going to be $1 million moneymaker thing, but we tried to stay a part of people's lives. Because if you stop being a part of people's lives, it's harder to win them back, as opposed to, staying a part of it through those harder times and giving people things to escape from and to be excited about. And then, when Charleston opened back up and a lot of other states and cities were still very closed down, we found a way to kind of balance out having people in the store while still following, recommended safety measures and stuff. So you'd have people wearing masks, you'd have less people in at a time. You would, you'd try to make sure you were being smart about it, but at the same time, like, you could still have a lot of that same community element, and people were coming from closed states to open states with money in their hand saying, I want to have fun. I need some books. I need some hobbies. I need some toys. And when they do that and they remember all the work you've put into being a fun place, and they see that you're still trying to put in that work, then, hopefully those people come in and, reciprocate that love and passion and community.
So back to your marketing degree that you mentioned, do you find yourself using that practice a lot for the store? I mean, the con itself is a giant, advertisement, which is great. But I guess with marketing being like 80% digital now, do you find a lot of self like spreading there now?
So marketing in general is kind of a mindset as much as it is an execution. And one of the things they try to teach you is that marketing is kind of like a pair of glasses or a perspective of how you look at things. So the idea is, how does everything we do and sell and how we present ourselves tell a story? And what do we want that story to be? So, marketing is, we bought new LED lights for the top of the building. Well, that's part of marketing because you want the store to be bright and well lit. It's presentation of how we do the product and how we, organize the back issues. Like, it's all telling a story. And the story is supposed to be that this is accessible, this is fun, this is organized and easy to find. I'm not the bargain store with the crap thrown on the shelves in the brown boxes that are half cut up with box cutters and have bargain stickers on it and no one to talk to you.
You can just say Ollie's. We all know what you're talking about.
I mean, but like, it's a different type of store. Like, when you go there, you are not looking for experience. You are looking for cheap stuff.
Yeah.
So you try to say, okay, if we're not going to be the bargain store, we're obviously not the like bougie, high-end, super fancy, walk in and to a red carpet kind of an atmosphere. So if we're going to be not those things, what is it we're going to be? And so that like community, that welcoming, that fun, that relationship needs to stand out in everything that we do. And if it doesn't, then us telling you we're the best store in Charleston, or us telling you we're really fun place to be, it's not going to ring authentic and true. A lot of advertising and a lot of that kind of stuff is digital. A lot of that is online, and it's interesting because we're almost kind of the counter effect of that, where so much of our life is online, so much of our life is impersonal, so much of our life is very corporate, that going somewhere where when you walk in the door we greet you by name, or we know what you're into, or we care about it, like, that's something that I think people like and that people miss, and that people don't even necessarily know they need and want in their life until they see it and they're like, oh man, I've really enjoyed this. And as there are plenty of different ways to entertain yourself and plenty of different things that want your money, if we're going to stand out, we've got to give something unique. And so that becomes that focus.
No, I totally get it. I mean, all my life I've wanted to go into like a diner and just be like, I'll have the usual, whether that be a steak and eggs or a Spider-Man, whatever the latest Spider-Man comic is. So yeah,
I've always wondered, the way you display at a comic book store, where things are, is there a rhyme or reason? You sound very good at marketing. Is there a way to control retail flow, stuff like that? I think personally at your store that you have the center island, or the center counters.
Yeah.
And you
cases.
always have folks in there that you can ask on either side. So what's kind of the rhyme or reason of that?
When I got to the store, I spent a good 6 months just kind of talking to people and looking at things and watching where people would stop, where people would congregate, what the focus was, what people needed more help on, what people needed less help on, and then tried to kind of shift and adjust based on that. So, right across from the register is going to be your high dollar showcase statues and your Marvel graphic novels. Well, Marvel graphic novels are the most popular graphic novels, so they're going to be right up front near the staff. A couple years ago, we adjusted all of our indie graphic novels to, instead of being sorted by publisher or alphabetical or something like that, we went by genre. So now you have a fantasy section, you have a crime section, you have a sci-fi section, and a horror section, because at the end of the day, people didn't really care if Boom published it or Image Comics published it. They just wanted to know where the spooky books were. Yeah. And so we put that kind of near the front as well, because that requires more hand selling, because people need more help looking at that stuff. your new books are toward the back because your new books are kind of sold to your dedicated crowd that knows what they're looking for. So putting them toward the back of the store, they're the ones that are going to go deep into the store and hunt for that stuff on their own. You don't have to hand sell them that quite as much. It takes care of itself. And then some of it depends on what type of product we have coming in, because we buy collections from individuals and because stuff isn't corporately mandated. If we have a ton of Ninja Turtle toys, then maybe one section becomes Ninja Turtles and you move the half smaller amount of stuff you had there to where the Ninja Turtles were. So you're able to kind of adjust based on what's selling and what's popular, as well as what you have, to make sure it all kind of fits and flows as well as it can.
Yeah, so it's like almost like an ever-changing flow, because you don't know who's going to walk in with what toy or what comic. Yeah.
So you would say you're trying to serve people what their needs are, almost like you're serving it to them on a half shell.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry, that was terrible. I apologize.
Well, that's good. I mean, think about a lot of not just comic stores, but any kind of retail and stuff like that, where you're kind of left to your own faculties to figure the place out. Comic book stores, and I guess y'all can chime in, they can be a little overwhelming with just the full walls of stuff, and just it can be sensory overload sometimes.
Well, especially I think after the boom, I remember I first got into like comics really probably like 2007-ish. I was young. I was reading Civil War or whatever, and then 2008 happened, and then Iron Man came out, and then now suddenly like there are more titles and everything's gangbusters. I imagine it's a lot more sensory overload now than it probably used to be.
So what I try to do is I try to break down the store into smaller groupings of things. So it's not all the graphic novels on a 40-foot wall. It's 12 foot of Spotlight Marvel graphic novels and a 6-foot section next to it of stuff in alphabetical order that's also Marvel. Then you hit the next section and it's 12 foot of fantasy stuff, but it's only that 12 foot. And so if you can break that into smaller chapters, then it's a little easier to go, okay, I like Marvel. What do I do? Oh, this 10 feet, 15 feet section is Marvel graphic novels. Oh, it's right there. We have a whole section that's basically the stuff from TVs and movies and video games.
Yeah.
So Ninja Turtles and Star Wars and Godzilla and Power Rangers and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, that's all in one section, usually right next to the toys. You can make it little reasonable neighborhoods of understanding, as opposed to just a flood of houses where you really can't make your way around. And some of that is watching people, and some of that is paying attention, and some of it is having staff that is watching the customers and saying, all right, does this guy look confused? Does this lady look like she doesn't know where these things are? Are we open to greeting people? Are we engaging with people well enough that they feel comfortable asking us questions? Because we're not going to, oh, you don't know every little thing about this. You didn't pass the test. Ha ha, we're going to make fun of you. And there are plenty of stores like that. There are plenty of people like that. But I don't find it's a good way to live. And then it's definitely not a good way to welcome people in. And
especially if you are passionate about it, you want to bring people into the hobby. You don't want to, be that gatekeeper.
Well, I was going to ask, as a comic book owner, do you feel like you have to consume all the media to stay up to this stuff? Like, I have to watch Madam Web or else I'm going to, be made fun of.
There is now enough content around this hobby that I can't keep up.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that. Like, I'm genuinely am. I mean, when I was, growing up, I'm 40 this year. So, growing up, there was a superhero-ish movie every couple of years.
Right, yeah.
And then it hit the 2000s and you got maybe one a year and you hoped it wasn't terrible. Because you're dealing with Fox Daredevil or Fantastic Four or
Don't
X-Men
you
1.
dare talk bad about Spawn.
And, these are perfectly enjoyable films, but, there's nothing brilliant about them. I mean, the kids growing up now who are 20 years old, I mean, they started when they were in kindergarten watching Iron Man and have watched them their entire lives. So there's this huge crowd of people who know superheroes very, very well, but have never touched a comic book. So we've got to be somewhere that's open and welcoming for that crowd, because if they show up and they go, well, I liked the Spider-Man movies, but the comic books don't make any sense, and I don't know where anything is, and what does this number one mean, and they just throw their hands up and walk out the door, well, that's a loss of somebody who likes the material but doesn't know the format. And so, I think it's great. I'm glad that so many people get to experience that now, and that it's much more commonplace, and it's not just, a weird hobby for nerds and losers. It's a cool, welcomed pop culture thing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice to see. I guess the average comic book customer has been just changing in the past 5 years, becoming more popular to explore these types of areas. Yeah.
Well, that was one of the things I think the Expo does really well, is like, it may not come into a comic book store if you are not a dedicated person who read comics, or if you did not grow up it, or a friend doesn't invite you, like, you may just not have a hook to come into a comic book store. And things like Free Comic Book Day help with that. But in general, we're a niche kind of a thing. But a comic book convention, which is essentially just a festival, that's very welcoming to people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You can show up with your friends, you can look at all the cool people in costume, you can buy a print or a poster for your wall, and it's not a high barrier for entry emotionally. It's just a fun experience to do with people. And really a lot of that's why I started doing the Expo, was just, okay, if festivals and events are going to be a thing that's trendy and cool, well, I mean, why would it not be done by the people who run the comic book store in town, as opposed to waiting to somebody else to kind of, do your thing for you and hope, they do it well, or hope that it's something you can still participate in. And we started off with a couple hundred people at the Danny Jones Rec Center in Park Circle the first year for one day for $5, and now it's, a few thousand people over, a 2-day event over at Patriots Point in a venue that's, 5-10 times the size of what we started off as. And it's great because, we've got 15 to 20 people who volunteer to help out that weekend, a lot of which have done it for years on years on years. We've got a great group of artists and vendors and special guests who have come back many, many times. We're always trying to keep it fresh, do it a little better, a little bigger every year. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like, we're at a really good size to be able to do it as still the community-based event that's such a focal point of the brand, while at the same time having grown and having done something bigger that gets a lot of people into it. I went and dropped off flyers in Mount Pleasant, and I saw somebody with a poster in the window, and I said, well, if they'll put up that poster, maybe they'll put up mine, and walked inside, and it was a place that sold like specialized bird food or something. Like something I literally never knew was even was a thing. And I walk in, and the guy's like, yeah, I've been to your convention like 5 times over the past couple of years. Give me a poster, I'll put it up. And so it's great because there's so many people that I've not met necessarily, or I've spoken to briefly, who know who I am, who have been a part of this event, who have a really good time with us, who may never or have never came into the store.
Yeah.
So you have some like great artists and guests coming. If you want, I would like to hear you talk about some of your favorites and perhaps like your dream get. Like, it doesn't have to necessarily even be an artist, like it could be anybody like in the, not even in the genre. Pick a president, like whatever, like who would you like to have?
I mean, so one of the things that I focus on when I'm going for special guests is who have I talked to that seems like they're good people that would leave you walking away smiling.
You want the people visiting to have a good time too. I mean, that's the main goal, right?
Like a moody artist.
I mean, if we're ranking the value of a guest, right? I would rather have a guest that's a B guest with an A experience than an A guest with an okay experience. Because at the end of the day, we're attached to these characters and this art and this art form because it has a meaning to us. It brings us joy. It makes us feel things. And if what we feel is, that guy that I talked to, he can draw good, but he's kind of an a-hole. Like, if that's our takeaway from the experience, then it's not a good experience.
I mean, yeah, that's the way I feel about Devin. Yeah.
But, so a lot of the people that we've had are people that I've met along the way that I've said, wow, like, you are very talented and you are very great at leaving me smiling and wanting more. And so I would rather bring in people like that who maybe aren't necessarily as big of a brand name in the industry, but are remarkably talented and really good people. And what happens is after a while, you start working with good people, and good people tell their friends, and those friends tell their friends, and you start meeting other good people as a result. I mean, our big guest of honor is Jim Shooter. And Jim Shooter was, I mean, he was the editor-in-chief of Marvel for 10 years. He's done more in the comic industry than most. I mean, if you were to talk about top 10 list of influential people in comics, he's definitely among them. And that's a pretty big get for a small town show. And relative to your megacons and your San Diego Comic Cons and New York Comic Cons, like, we are a small town comic show. But it was one of those where I'm friends with, a business friend and a personal friend of his for years, and we're on the same page as far as what we want the show to be. And I work very hard to make the show successful for him, and he works very hard to make the show successful for us. And then when he's talking to people and saying, you guys should come down and do this, it's a lot of fun, these guys work really hard, it's a great event, you'll have a wonderful time. And so we're able to bring in really talented and quality people as a result of that. We've worked with James Mulligan for a few years now. I mean, this is a guy who was in the Arab Emirate last week doing a show and was at MegaCon, which was a huge show the week before that. And he's doing, it's Tokyo Comic Con. And this guy is internationally huge. And he's done gallery work for Disney, and he's done stuff in the advertising world for Coca-Cola and the Hugh Hefner stuff and the Elvis Presley family business. And you go, okay, but he heard good things about our show. We spoke and chatted a bit. We were on the same page as far as values and what we wanted from those kind of things. And now he makes a point to do our smaller event, for the last 3 years, I believe. When he doesn't have to, and he could fill in his spot with other bigger shows or fly to some other country and do all that stuff. But he loves the customers, he loves the show, he loves the family and the community that we built, and he wants to be a part of it. Greg Bo Watson's a big South Carolina guy who does a lot of pinup style art. Nicest, sweetest guy you'd meet. You got to ask him about Disney stuff because you'll watch his face light up when you ask him about Disney stuff. Megan Withy is great. I chat with her and her husband pretty regularly, even outside of the comic book side of things. And she does watercolor painting of princesses, and now she's getting into more Japanese stuff, so a bit more Astro Boy and some of that stuff. But it was one of those where you'd look at it and you say, okay, we have a lot of superhero guys coming. Who do we have to appeal to the wives and the girlfriends and the ladies that are coming? Because my daughter is very, very strong-willed, and if she sees a bunch of cool stuff for her brother and nothing for her, she's not going to be happy with me, and she's going to let me know.
Understandable.
And I got to make sure she's happy and excited too. I want her walls to be filled with beautiful art, just like I want his walls to be filled with beautiful art. So it's like I say, you asked about marketing earlier, and that's kind of all part of it, where it's just kind of a mindset of saying, who are we? What do we want to do? What does that mean? And how do we make everything we do fit under that umbrella?
You've got a lot of special guests and stuff, but heck, even your vendors, your comic book vendors and stuff like that, I am surprised every year just how far and wide your selection of comic book vendors are that come to the con, and just the great collections I always see every time.
Yeah, and they're from a lot of different places too. So that's
not just
do people?
It's about 4 or 5 states. Because we've got as far as south as Florida. We got a lot of people out of Florida now. North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, and then maybe into Tennessee just a little bit.
Okay, as far as the expo, it is this month, and it's going to be on the 24th and 25th, right?
Yes, February 24th and 25th. It's 10 to 5, that's Saturday, 10 to 4, that's Sunday. On Saturday, we will have, slightly different programming than Sunday, though the vendors and the artists will be there and the same both days. On Saturday, we have a stage full of Star Wars costumers with the 501st and the Rebel Legion. So these are camera-ready Star Wars characters. And whether it's Stormtroopers or Jedi or Sith, and honestly, they don't tell me who's coming out, and I just get to be surprised every year. But these are camera-ready. So some of the people from adjoining groups of the 501st have actually filled in as extras in Star Wars film and TV projects.
Holy smokes.
So this isn't just, some guy with his Halloween Express costume showing up. This is the real deal. They'll be out there Saturday for at least the beginning part of the day. And then we'll also have our panels on Saturday. And then Sunday will be more of kind of the cosplay live and the cosplay focus, where we'll have the cosplay parade with the kids a couple times during the day, I believe, and then we will have the cosplay presentation. Now we have changed the way we do cosplay, and it's not your traditional contest approach. I have a great team that works on this mostly on my behalf, because that is not my language. That is their language. And I am much more of a mindset that if you have people who love it and are passionate about it and speak that language, they should lead and I should edit, as opposed to the other way around. And so what we kind of have focused on is just kind of the joy and appreciation of building your costumes, being excited about it, improving it, wearing it, showing it off, encouraging each other. Because at the end of the day, if we have winners and losers, if I have 100 people participate and I have 3 winners, then I got 97 disappointed people who spent hours and hours building these awesome costumes from scratch many times. And we don't have any need to send them home being disappointed because they weren't good enough.
Do you find that, not pedestrian fans, but general folks that show up, is the cosplay, they see that and that's the moment they're like, holy smokes, this is performance as well?
I mean, I think watching people and interacting with people in these really well-made costumes is just fun, especially if, like, you don't have to know anything to say, oh man, there's Tinkerbell. I love Tinkerbell.
Right.
Why, and especially when the people who are in the costume get into it and they have a good time with it, and, they can explain to you either how they made the costume or what they did to design the sword that they're carrying around, or if they're a little kid and they just want to talk to Tinkerbell and the person just, talks back as Tinkerbell. Like, I think those are just really fun memories and moments. I mean, even as someone who's in this and probably a little more comfortable and used to it than the average bear, like, there's still people that I see walking by at shows that I will stop them and say, hey, you look fantastic. Can I take a picture of it so I can show my kids that you're, dressed up as a pink Hello Kitty style Mandalorian? Like, this is really cool. Please,
awesome,
let's have some fun with this. And so I think it's one of those things that I'd say probably 15% of the people dress up at the event, which is perfect for me because I'm not someone who dresses up in that kind of stuff. It's just not my thing. So I don't want to be the weird one who doesn't dress up to a Halloween party. And I don't want other people to feel like they have to dress up. While at the same time, if it was only like 3 or 4 people, then the people who wanted to dress up would look like the weird ones because there's no one dressed up. And they're not welcome. They'd feel awkward doing so. Yeah. So we have this like nice little mix of it being enough people for everybody who wants to dress up to feel good. While at the same time, if you're just like, I'm going to look around and wear my Spider-Man t-shirt, you're perfectly fine to do that as well.
Cool.
Yeah. It always impresses me just how much you can do with with so little in those cosplays too. Like people just using like foam core and PVC, and then it turns out to be almost like, like actual replica stuff.
Like movie quality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll wrap it up a little bit. I've got a couple of just kind of round robin questions for everybody, DJ, Jonathan, and Mike. So I'm going to kick it off with one of my favorite questions. DJ, you can start it off. Wolverine versus Iron Man.
I mean, that healing factor has just been inflated so much in the past few years. I got to go Iron Man, though.
Okay.
I mean, flying, I don't see how he'll ever reach Iron Man if he could just attack from,
okay. Jonathan, what do you think?
Outlast him. So I'm going to give you the answer that you gave me as a kid constantly when I'd pester you over and over about these questions. And that question is, whose book is it?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's right. Mike, what do you think?
I'm going to say Wolverine because I think Iron Man should win, but I think if we're going to the death, Iron Man's going to run out of ability to keep away from Wolverine before Wolverine runs out of ability to fix himself back up.
Just outlast him.
He can just straight up outlast him. That's what I'm going to go with as the probably answer.
Okay. Next round. This is just one word. Don't even elaborate.
Okay.
So, favorite.
Thor Ragnarok.
Okay. How about you, Jonathan?
Original Spider-Man 2.
Okay. Mike?
I think I'm going Cap Winter Soldier.
Okay.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
I think that's at least the best of the Marvels.
Well, because they change genre on it. Like it's a spy thriller instead of like they kind of.
I think it's the best film of the Marvels.
Well, my favorite is the first Cap.
Sure.
So because it's stuck in the time frame. I think they nailed a lot of the stuff.
The hokiness too.
And Strucker
like,
and everything. So
I'll say Guardians, though, is probably one of the easiest to watch for me.
But in retrospect,
fantastic.
It's a victim of its own success, in that like I feel like so many superhero movies now feel like they have to be like Guardians.
Yeah. But
it was so good.
But I can throw it on in the background and just have it on at any point in time.
So fun.
It was
and
great.
I always enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the other thing is, I mean, Guardians, especially that lineup, was not exactly household names. So that's what was phenomenal about it. You know.
Oh, it's like you have like Bradley Cooper, and then you're never going to see his face. Meanwhile, the schlubby sitcom guy is going to be the main character.
Yeah, just the
Only
characters.
saying 3 words throughout the whole movie.
Yeah, then Groot. I mean, well, we won't go down that wormhole. That's for another conversation. All right, Devin, you know the last round robin question.
Okay. Well, this is the Shrimp City report. So I thought it's good to establish, since this is a Shrimp City report, what's everyone's favorite way to eat shrimp? Start with Jonathan.
At a live show that I'm playing at, preferably at a Captain's Comics Expo with my band that I'm plugging right now called The Innocents, Charleston's #1 psychobilly band.
How about you, Mike? What's your favorite way to eat shrimp?
So my father-in-law was a professional shrimper up until a couple years ago.
Oh, wow.
And he would, go out on the boat and catch them and bring them home and cook them with, 5 generations and 40 years of practice cooking shrimp and grits. So it didn't get any better than seeing him bring home shrimp that were, like the size of your fist that he had caught that morning and would cook for you that night.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah, that's perfect. I like boiled head on.
Yeah.
Just regular steamed
Just a
shrimp
little
or
Old
something.
Bay and
Yeah, some Old Bay.
simple.
Got to do Old Bay.
I'm
DJ?
more of like a seasoned fried. If you
Like a
fry
tempura?
anything, I'll eat it. But yeah, I like fried shrimp a lot. Yeah.
Okay, now that we've established that closing question for all of our podcasts, we're going to have to change our shrimp choices each time, right?
Yeah. Pretty
God,
much.
they're gonna do like the Bubba Gump, like I like them fried, I like them boiled.
All right, well, I appreciate you coming by, Mike. Everybody go to the expo. We'll definitely be hanging out there as well. And it's a weekend of fun. It's a Saturday and Sunday. It's most of the days, and there's events each day.
You can find all the details about the event at captainscomicexpo.com. That's got your advanced ticket options. That's got your guest list. That's got your times. That's got all the frequently asked questions. So just captainscomicexpo.com.
All right, thanks for coming by, and so long, everyone. We'll see you next time on the Shrimp City Report.
Yeah, man, it's
We're out.
Pleasure, man.